Welcome students. This session is for BA second year English Literature paper 2nd. In this session, I'll be continuing with the essay by G.K. Chesterton on the pleasures of no longer being very young. Before we continue with the text, let's have a recap of my previous session. In this essay on the pleasures of no longer being very young by G.K. Chesterton, he analyzes the advantage of old age with the help of humor, paradox, and frequent allusion. So Chesterton gives some examples from maxims, from traditions, and in a very humorous manner, he gives the advantage of old age in comparison to young age. Getting older is a universal experience. This is something which is related to each and everyone in his lifetime, because at some point of time everybody gets to grow old, and the writer is giving all logics and giving all sorts of advantages of growing old. This experience can tell us the relevance of traditions and maxims in the ever-changing modern world. This world may become modern, or it keeps on changing, as we know that nothing is static, but with the old age we come to know that the tradition and the proverbs which have been passed down to us from generations, this is related to something very relevant and important in our life, and things might change, but the meaning and the importance of traditions and maxims in our life remains same. Now, coming to the text of this essay, let's continue. Chesterton writes, for instance, we have just seen a staggering turn of the wheel of fortune which has brought all the modern material pride and prosperity to a standstill. So maybe he's referring to the economic depression times. He says that time changes everything. If a person is rich, with the change of time, he may turn poor, and poor may become rich. This is the wheel of fortune which has brought all the modern material pride and prosperity to a standstill. Suddenly you find that due to this economic depression, all the material pride and prosperity of the nation, it has stopped, it has come to a standstill. America, which a year or two ago seemed to have become one vast El Dorado studded with cities of gold, is almost as much embarrassed as England. And then he gives example of America, which he compares to vast El Dorado. Now, El Dorado is a place which is famous for wealth and opportunities. So America, which was considered some years ago as a place of wealth and prosperity and possibilities, which was considered as a rich country studded with the cities of gold, is almost as much embarrassed as England. So England, which was prosperous at one moment of time, at the time of colonization, the time has changed, and now England is not in that wealthy condition. It is in an embarrassed condition. In the same manner, this fortune, this time, it changes, and now the condition of America is also same as that of England, and really much more embarrassed than Ireland. So he gives comparison of some countries, that with this economic depression, how time has changed, and now their prosperity and pride is no more as it was before. This shows that with the passage of time, things change. The industrial countries are actually finding it difficult to be industrial, because this is the course of nature of things, that once a thing has progressed to a level, it becomes very difficult to maintain that progress after some time. And in the same manner, these industrial countries, because of the lack of some natural resources, they are finding very difficult to be industrial, while the old agricultural countries still find it possible to be industrious. So there is a possibility that agricultural countries at a point of time, there is a progress that can be seen that they can turn into an industrial country, but industrial countries, they have reached their limit. So just like a circle of life, after complete height, there is a downfall which cannot be avoided. And if a person is on a lower level, if a country is at agricultural level, there is a possibility to rise. It can turn into an industrious one. Now, I do not pretend to have prophesied or expected this, but this is something which is quite common and which is quite common to one's understanding. One cannot say that this is something that everybody can prophesy or expect, for a man may cheerfully call a thing rotten without really expecting it to rot. Because it's very easy to call something rotten without really expecting it. But neither certainly did the young, the progressive, the prosperous, or the adventurous expect it. So when a person is young and a person is progressive, and in the same manner he is prosperous and adventurous, they never expect that things can, in the future course of time, can be reversed. They think as if their youth age or the progression is going to continue the same forever and ever. The rich are going to remain rich, and they keep on adventuring for the new things, because they do not expect that with the wheel of fortune, everything after attaining a peak does fall down. Yet all history and culture is stiff with proverbs and prophecies telling them to expect it. Because we know, even in history it's written that history repeats itself. Whatever is happening, the culture and history are just stiff with proverbs and prophecies, that nothing remains permanent. Everything has fall after the prosperous and the time full of pride. But people, they do not learn anything from the history or from culture, and especially the young and the progressive people, they always imagine that things are going to remain, and they are going to remain same forever. But the history says that things do change, and the wheel of fortune, sometimes it brings prosperity, and with the change of time does bring a fall. The trouble is that they thought the proverbs and history a great deal too stiff. Actually, a writer gives the reason that why young people, they do not understand or they do not learn from history or magazines, because they think that history and proverbs, they are quite stiff. Whatever has happened in history is not applicable to the modern times. But as they grow old, as they experience time, they come to know that this history or these proverbs, they keep on happening in one's life, maybe in a new shape, but they keep on returning to human beings, and they are as meaningful, as practical in their daily lives as they were when they happened. So again and again, with monotonous iteration, both my young friends and myself have been told from childhood that fortune is fickle, that riches take themselves wings and fly, that power can depart suddenly from the powerful, that pride goes before the fall, and insolence attracts thunderbolt of the gods. But it was all unmeaning to us. So he gives example of lot of proverbs which he has been listening right from his childhood, and he says that monotonously, again and again, in a very repetitive manner, when I was young, and me and my friends, they have been told from childhood, and this is the list of these proverbs, that fortune is fickle, that fortune does not favor always. Sometimes one is fortunate and sometimes misfortune comes in. That riches take to themselves wings and fly. That a person never remains permanently wealthy. Riches do have wings and they fly at one point of time. Power can depart suddenly from the powerful. People think that power is permanent, but this power also, it suddenly leaves a person, no matter how powerful that person is. That pride goes before a fall. That if you take too much pride in anything, that leads to fall. And insolence attracts the thunderbolt of God. And if a person is insolent, if a person is arrogant, gods will become angry. All these proverbs which are told to a person right from his childhood, At that time, when a person is young, it was all unmeaning to us. They were not able to understand, the writer and his friends were not able to understand the meaning of these proverbs and maxims because they have not lived life to see them coming true. And all the proverbs seem stiff and stale, like dusty labels on neglected antiquities. This is a nice example of a shop which deals in antiquities, which deals in old objects. And these proverbs appeared to this writer and his friends, that is in his youth age, as stiff and stale, as meaningless, as valueless, like dusty labels, like the labels on neglected antiquities, something which nobody buys, something which nobody is interested in taking or understanding. In the same manner, these proverbs, they had no meaning for the writer and his friends in the childhood, though they were told these proverbs in a monotonous reiteration that these things do happen in life, but that time, in the youth age, these proverbs appeared quite stiff to them and meaningless to them. Now, analysis of whatever we have read. Writer Chesterton, he talks about this economic depression which represents the failure of modern industrial world. It could have been avoided if people remembered the old lessons given by many proverbs. So this economic depression would not have happened if people would have learned from history that the riches or the wealth does not continue forever, but they were becoming adventurous and they were progressive, but they were not looking at the history that this progressiveness, this adventurous aspect doesn't last long. It is always said that luck, tried money are all temporary, but modern man does not learn anything from these examples. All this luck, this fortune, it favors none. At a point of time, fortune does step in, but in the next moment one finds that this fortune turns into misfortune. But modern man does not learn anything from these examples. Rather, they feel that whatever good is happening, it is quite static and is going to remain constant. For the writer, witnessing the economic depression is to see the dead proverbs come alive. But when one comes across in one's life the economic depression, one feels that yes, history is quite alive, and these dead proverbs that history repeats itself is not something which is a thing of the past. Rather, these proverbs which are handed to us from generations to generations, they are absolutely alive and they are meaningful in our day-to-day life and in our experiences. Thanks for this session. We'll continue with this essay in my next session.